In this video, we're going to go over a case study of a client of mine with whom I started working a few years ago when they were just starting out, and it's an extremely difficult business to start.
This video is brought to you by EpiPies Academy.
And a little bit of a controversial business. I don't think it's controversial, but some people do. It's about cuddling. I'll tell you all about it. So I searched for cuddling, and this client originally got my services for SEO because what he wanted to do is to rank on the first page of Google for the word cuddling, which we did. And of course, some things are impossible to jump over. When you search for cuddling, you're going to get a dictionary item. Okay, so you're going to get a dictionary result for sure. Then you're going to get some like medical site, and then Urban Dictionary, Wikipedia, WikiHow, all these things. And then you got the Cuddlist. And this is that business, Cuddlist. So let's click on it. What is that business? It's essentially a platform where you can hire someone to come to your house and cuddle with you. It's not like weird or perverse. It's actually, there's like health benefits to it. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's a legitimate business. It's a legitimate service. It's not sexual. But what you can see here is, look at this. In regards to publicity, look at all these publicity pieces. Yahoo, Chicago Tribune, New York Times, Washington Post, Glamour Magazine, Cosmopolitan, Forbes, all the major things, they got featured in there. How? Let's talk about it, because I interviewed, this is the founder, Adam Lippin. He's the one who originally contacted me. He started this company, and I kind of became friendly with him over time, and I interviewed him, and this video is based on that interview. I just took all the points and summed them up into what I hope is going to come out to a shorter video. So let's go over the Cuddlist business case study. The challenge with it, it was extremely hard to promote because it's a new concept and no one knew that this existed. Like somebody coming over to your house to cuddle, people don't know that this exists, and nobody searches for it, nobody looks for it. How do you promote this? So the original idea was to rank for the word cuddling, but really my strategy, because cuddling is such a difficult keyword to rank for, it's a single word and it's a popular word. My strategy was that we need to get major publicity from big sites, because those sites would link to the Cuddlist site and give it really strong authority for SEO, and therefore the Cuddlist site would become very authoritative and rank in Google. That was the strategy, and so our goal was to get publicity, because I wasn't even confident that the cuddling keyword was going to do it, because it's a little bit of an ambiguous keyword. We don't know that a person looking for cuddling as a search is looking for somebody to come over their house. That's a stretch. So I thought, why don't we get publicity and at the same time boost the SEO? That was my suggestion. And then I let this client go and execute it. And I'll talk in a second about what ended up happening. But just in case you're curious, like there is a lot of science behind it, because at the moment there's like a lot of loneliness in society and people need touch. And this is actually what this business solves. Is just it actually tries to solve the loneliness issue in society. And a lot of people say, oh, that's weird. But some people say that's amazing. So this is a very polarizing idea. Like some people love it, some people hate it. And that actually was a strength. So ultimately, the New York Times, Washington Post, like all those major publications picked it up. And also Adam got on hundreds of radio appearances, including the Howard Stern show. How in the world did he do it? So that was my question for him. How? And first is that unique and daring differentiation. Like he wasn't afraid to be weird a little bit, right? And the tagline with which he pitched reporters and journalists was, "Our society is sex obsessed, but touch deprived." First of all, the word sex just jumps out. People want to read that whole sentence, even though the sentence is not really about sex. So he got that attention that way. And so if you remember, like we always talk about, stand out, be different. Sometimes it takes courage, and it did in this case. Like I don't think I could be doing interviews about this. I think I would be a little shy, and I think most people would too. So it takes a little courage. And Adam recommended, what he did was every day he had a list of like 10 journalists or bloggers he reached out to, and he kept on finding new bloggers on Twitter, on YouTube, on social media, new people who cover this genre. And what he also did is, like, usually he got no replies on his first pitch. So he would follow up every 2 weeks. There are some reporters that eventually covered him that took like weeks and weeks and weeks of following up. So most people, they pitch a reporter once, they get no answer, and they move on. He was persistent, and he would stop only if they literally told him, please stop emailing me. Unless they told him, please stop emailing, he would just keep reminding them, hey, look at what we're doing this week. Hey, we just launched something else. Hey, we just crossed the 1,000 user mark. Hey, we just crossed the 10,000 user mark. So he would try to keep on being on the radar of these gigantic journalists. And also, he was positioning himself as an expert as he was doing the interviews. He was also writing articles about loneliness and benefits of touch and all this. So he was becoming like the kind of authority on this topic, so that it actually became easier for journalists to feature him because, yeah, he's the expert. Of course, you'd ask him. So over time, they'd start to invite him. So it was a two-pronged approach to get publicity, right? Like he approached the journalists, brute force, a lot of follow-up and cold outreach and follow-up. And of course, he built up his own credibility as he was doing it by publishing his own content. And he wrote on medium.com, and he did a lot of YouTube, stuff like that. And then during our interview, I asked him, so like, let's say on day one, what did you do? Because most people face this issue on day one, like what to do. And he said on day one, he basically made a list of who he knows that knows someone who might help. Because I think all of us, including myself, I know a few people who might help, but that list is short of people who can help directly. But people who might know someone else, now that list is long, right? Those secondary connections. And he also started reaching out to freelance bloggers and YouTubers and LinkedIn and people on LinkedIn and publicists for hire, even on freelancing sites like Fiverr, like Upwork. If anybody had traffic to give him that relevant traffic, he would buy it. He would pay for it. But also, he would just keep finding everybody who would cover it and put those people on his outreach list and kind of build up relationships with them over time. And then I asked him, how did the New York Times story come out? And he actually told me it came out, like it took 3 months for that story to get published from the original pitch to the publishing. So it took a long time to do. And he basically contacted some distant contact journalist who was like working in China. And he just had this compelling pitch, right? Unique pitch. And that guy got interested and said, oh, I might know someone at the style section of the New York Times. And then they forwarded to that person. That person got approval, and so on and so on. And eventually, 3 months later, the story came out. So you see, it was a friend of a friend of a friend kind of a thing. But it started from that interesting pitch. And the first reporter was like, this sounds like some story that can be printed and be interesting. And so they passed it on. On the other hand, if it sounded like, this sounds like a boring story that wouldn't be that compelling, then they wouldn't pass it on. So it's not that much about connections. It's really about being interesting, because connections, they don't really get you into the big magazines because there's editors there. And the editors are like, well, nobody's going to get interested in this story. We can't run it no matter whose friend you are almost. And that particular story in the New York Times, not only did it take 3 months, it also took 15 follow-up emails that Adam sent to the original journalist just to say, hey, just letting you know, is there anything you need? Like, is there anything I can help with? I'm here if you have any questions. Just polite little reminders, maybe a couple of weeks apart each, because people are busy and they forget, so you just want to kind of remind them. And over time, Adam got a ton of publicity, and now he's reached millions upon millions upon millions of people. He actually did the impossible, because traditionally, to get this amount of attention requires millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in spending on publicists, on buying those articles in the glamour magazines. He got it all for free. So that's what Adam did. It's a real story. There aren't a lot of things he did. He basically was interesting, persistent, and relentless. And it seems too simple to be true. Yes, it's too simple to be true. There is no like tricky formula here. But at the same time, that just goes to show that it can work.